Отже, доброго дня, колеги. Я сподіваюся, мене чути. Добрий день, мене звати Надім Усаїнов. Нагадую, це форум персональної демократії, який вже четвертий форум, який цього року з огляду на COVID-19 відбувається в онлайн-форматі. Темою наріжною, основною темою цьогорічного форуму є місцевий вимір цифрової трансформації.
Local dimension of digital transformation. I have the honor to moderate the second today's session, today's discussion. And within this discussion, we shall continue thinking of how to provide for well-balanced digital transformation. And it is my pleasure to introduce your guests, your speakers, Mr. Vadim Bortnik, Director of the Regional Digitalization of the Ministry, Olena Gunko, Department for Information Technology of the Lviv City Hall, Mr. Michal Lakomsky, authorized representative of the mayor of Poznań, Poland, responsible for smart city.
I would like to welcome the guests and the participants of this panel. I would like to
welcome the guests, participants of the discussion. First of all, I would like to remind the participants, those who have involved in Zoom, to ask the questions in chat and share their opinions in the second part of today's discussion. We would like to ask the questions to the speaker. I will start.
Алло, чи мене чути? Мене викинуло чомусь.
The question is if you can hear the speaker.
Чути. Не знаю, що сталося. Вибачаюся. Добре, продовжимо. Я на початок віддам слово.
In the beginning, I will give the floor
Кожному спікеру по черзі.
To every speaker, one by one, for 10-15 minutes. I kindly requested the speakers to make their introductory speeches, and later on we shall make clarification questions, and we shall communicate with the wider audience. we invite Mr. Vadim Bortnik. Mr. Vadim, you're
Колеги,
welcome.
вітаю,
Dear
радий
colleagues, I would like
бачити
to
знайомі
welcome you.
обличчя.
I'm happy to see your familiar
Олена,
faces, Mr. Oleg.
сподіваюся, що во Львові все
Len, I
відбувається,
hope
цифрова
everything in
трансформація
Lviv
відбувається.
goes on.
Зараз, з
Digital
вашого
transformation
дозволу,
goes on successfully in
зроблю
the city of
шерінг
Lviv. I will share my
екрану,
screen if you allow me.
презентації. Чи ви бачите екран?
Do you see the screen?
Так. Добре. Я знаю, що сьогодні,
That's right. I know that.
Скажімо так, рік тому створилася Міністерство цифрової трансформації. Ви знаєте, що нашими основними завданнями є перевести послуги в онлайн, тому що це дешевше, швидше для людини і це антикорупційно. Для того, щоб відбулася ця можливість людини скористатися, потрібно, щоб вона вміла користуватися смартфоном, в неї був інтернет. В цьому напрямку міністерство працює. Я думаю, що сьогодні у вас вже було достатньо інформації від моїх колег з цього приводу, але нещодавно був створений окремий структурний підрозділ директорат, який я очолюю, який займається саме регіональною цифровізацією. І міністерство фокусується на цьому компоненті як на дуже важливому, тому що всі цифрові проекти, ці цифрові реформи, які відбуваються міністерством, в кінці кінців вони приземляться, якщо можна так сказати, на рівень місцевий, і тому моє важливе завдання, по-перше, залучити регіони до випрацювання спільних рішень на національному рівні, а по-друге, створити необхідні умови для того, щоб цифрова трансформація в регіонах відбувалася. Щодо візії того, що ми робимо. По-перше, це послуги. Ми вважаємо, що все, що відбувається в державі, а також в регіональній цифровізації, повинна бути сфокусована на кінцевому жителі і надавати йому сервіси та послуги зручні для нього. Друга – це інституційна спроможність. Це спроможність органу місцевого самоврядування, в першу чергу, не тільки великих міст, а й невеликих новостворених громад, щоб вони сформувати таку інституційну спроможність до створення цифровізації, цифрової трансформації в регіонах. Третє – це управління на основі даних, ефективне управління громадою, можливість приймати, щоб керівництво випрацьовувало рішення на основі даних. Ну і наостанок, звичайно, що національні і регіональні сервіси повинні поєднатися в автоматичну взаємодію. Це четверте наше візійне завдання. Про проблеми, я думаю, ви знаєте, це і низький рівень цифрової грамотності населення, чиновників, які приймають рішення, не до кінця розуміють люди, які приймають рішення в регіонах, мери та голови ОТГ, що цифрова трансформація – це така ж важлива галузь, і вона також приносить, має користь і результат, і пользу для громадян, як і інші галузі. І дуже важливо це розуміння сформувати. На жаль, проблематикою є те, що в регіональні системи інформаційні вони будувалися в різний час і різними подрядниками, і не мають спільної інтероперабельності та стандартів взаємодії. Ну і, звичайно, цифровий розрив, який поділяє великі міста і маленькі міста, і маленькі громади, дуже різний рівень цифрової доступності. З точки зору інституційної спроможності, ви знаєте, що Мінцифра вводить таке поняття, таку ідею в державі, як CDTO, заступник керівника з цифрової трансформації, Chief Digital Transformation Officer. Наразі в усіх міністерствах працюють заступники міністра з цифрової трансформації. Безпосередньо моя відповідальність за те, що в кожній обласній державній адміністрації з'явився заступник голови обласної державної адміністрації окремо, який займається цифровізацією, і головним його завданням є допомога місцевому самоврядуванню в тому, щоб цифровізація та цифрова трансформація відбулася. Ми вже почали працювати з тим, щоб такі заступники з'явилися. Є відповідна постанова Кабміну. Зараз активно працюємо з Офісом Президента, спільно шукаємо людей, які би і мали IT-досвід, і були лідерами, і управлінцями, які б могли впроваджувати системно по всій області таку систему управління. Зараз є 7 областей, які вже узгоджені кандидатури, 3 заступники призначені, ну і зараз після кадрових змін ми плануємо з новою енергією в Офісі Президента, з новою енергією долучитись до цього процесу, завдання, щоб в кожній області був свій цифровий лідер цифрової трансформації, але це ми говоримо про рівень областей. Також, звичайно, що ми фокусуємося і на рівні міст. Я маю прямий зв'язок з CDTO міст і з тими людьми, які керують відповідними структурними підрозділами. Маємо періодичну системну взаємодію, долучаю керівників IT-відділів та департаментів великих міст до спільної роботи, до створення. Зараз, наприклад, ми працюємо спочатку спільно Мінрегіон з Мінцифрою працювали над стратегією розвитку регіонів 2027, і там є більше 60 завдань з цифрової трансформації. Зараз під це робиться програма цифрової трансформації регіонів, і до цієї роботи, звичайно, долучаю експертів з регіонів для того, щоб ця програма була не тільки таким загальним документом, а щоб це була такий інструмент, завдяки якому можна знайти ресурси, в тому числі і в ДФРР, і у донорів, і в місцевих бюджетах також. Звичайно, що дуже важлива робота є, роз'яснювальна робота з депутатами, робота з головами ОТГ для того, щоб спільно знайти ті проекти, які важливі саме для кожного окремої громади або для кожного окремого регіону, що відповідає саме стратегії цього регіону. І тому, наприклад, типову програму інформатизації, яку ми розробили, завдання до якої ми розробили цифри, вона має перелік завдань, але, звичайно, кожен регіон обирає свій шлях цифрової трансформації, але однак наше завдання, щоб ці інструменти були поєднані. І також у нас є декілька проєктів для регіонів, наприклад, такі як портал «Дія цифрова громада», де буде цифровий рейтинг регіонів, в якому можна буде подивитись, на якому рівні знаходиться ваш регіон. До речі, ми зараз провели першу ітерацію, зробили такий конкурс, який зареєструвалося більше половини громад України, і деякі там близько 30-34 громади отримали нагороди від цифри як за цікаві проєкти цифрової трансформації. Також ми вважаємо, що тут дуже важливо не тільки вертикальну інтеграцію знизу вверх та зверху вниз, а забезпечити саме взаємодію регіонів один з одним, обмін даними, обмін інформацією, обмін кращими практиками, проєктами, відгуками про підрядників. Наприклад, ми зараз розробляємо маркетплейс цифрових рішень, тобто цей портал, де це маркетплейс, в якому будуть всі рішення, які використовують громади для своєї цифровізації, з можливістю залишити там відгук від реальної громади, яка це впроваджувала, і швидко по категоріях знайти ті проекти або ті команди, які ці проекти можуть впроваджувати. Не буду довго зупинятись. Звичайно, є форуми, є комунікаційні заходи і для залучення відповідних ініціативних людей в громадах і для того, щоб забезпечити спілкування. Я, мабуть, не буду дуже займати ваш час, але скажу таку річ, що цифрова трансформація на рівні держави, вона визначена як пріоритет. Регіональний компонент 100% важливий для громади. Зараз ми переходимо навіть в ручну комунікацію з великими містами, з працюємо з обласними
and we are
державними
working with
адміністраціями і
облast state
формуємо
administrations.
типові рішення
And we
для нових
formulate
невеликих
template
громад, залучаємо
solutions
для
for
цього
new smaller
донорів,
communities,
залучаємо,
involve the donors, involving
робимо
the
так,
donors, and we make sure
щоб інституційно
that
була
institutionally
можливість
there is an
громадам
opportunity
самостійно розвиватися.
communities
Навіть
to
в
develop
мене є таке
independently.
розуміння, що
Even I have an
я не
understanding.
знаю, на який час,
I
умовно
don't know
кажучи,
for what time.
я прийшов включитись в цю
I
цифрову
came here
трансформацію.
just to
Я розумію, що це
participate in
політика, і в
digital
нас зараз
transformation. I
міністри
understand it's
змінюються
politics.
іноді швидше,
The
ніж
ministers
пори
change
року,
faster
але
than seasons of the year.
моє
And
завдання
yet,
сформувати
my
таку
objective is
систему,
to
яка би
formulate
працювала
such a
далі, і для
system that
цього
would keep
основним
working
фокусом є
in
саме
the future.
місцеве
And the main focus
самоврядування,
is local
і
government.
те, що ми
Local
робимо,
self-governance, and
воно
what we
все
do
сфокусовано на
is
нашого
all
основного
focused
клієнта,
on
на
our main client,
заступника мера з цифрової
Deputy
трансформації, який, я
Mayor for
сподіваюся,
digital
скоро також
transformation.
з'явиться
I hope
ще
soon
і
there
в
will be
містах,
also
і в
in
громадах,
the
щоб були
municipalities, in the
люди з
communities,
відповідними
that there will
структурами, з
be people
відповідними
with relevant
ресурсами та
structures and
програмами, які
relevant
потім далі
resources and
можуть
programs
продовжувати. А
that
від нас, від
will
міністерства,
keep
забезпечити
going. And the
інтероперабельність
ministry
даних
will provide for
та
interoperability of
інформаційну
data
та політичну
as well as
підтримку цього
information
процесу.
and
Я дуже
political
дякую за
support of that
запрошення і
process.
сподіваюся, що
I would like to
цифровій
thank you for the
трансформації
invitation. I hope
бути.
digital
Ми
transformation
залишаємось на зв'язку. Передаю слово тоді наступному спікеру.
within digital
І, до речі,
transformation, we
якщо
shall stay in
у
touch. I
когось
give the
будуть
floor to the
якісь
next speaker.
питання,
If you have
будь
any
ласка, мій Фейсбук
questions,
завжди відкритий,
my
я
Facebook is
відповідаю.
always open. I
Будемо з
keep
вами на зв'язку.
answering,
Дякую.
and I will stay in touch with you. Thank you. I hope you can stay with us for a while. I have a clarification question to you. You mentioned that you have the hope that there will be the deputy mayors in the municipalities, in the community, responsible for IT on the local level. Those hopes from the part of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, is it backed by any support, institutional, financial, or any other, or you just encourage
Там,
that?
де ми можемо це зробити нормативно, це міністерство, центральні органи виконавчої влади та обласні державні адміністрації. Це було зроблено, і ми зараз забезпечимо так, щоб вся державна система, щоб ця галузь була створена, і вона почала рухати, щоб ми поєднали всі реєстри, так далі. З точки зору місцевого самоврядування, вважаю, що це якраз добре, що держава не може втрутитися в цей процес. Звичайно, що в нас будуть лідери, які і вже і так роблять велику роботу в цьому напрямку, але крок за кроком міста долучаються. Наприклад, Харків створив посаду заступника мера. Зараз Дніпропетровськ зробив таку заяву, що після виборів зараз вже є кандидатура людини, яка вийде на цей рівень. І ви розумієте, важливо, щоб міста і громади не фокусувалися не тільки на тому, що держава нам дасть субвенцію на прокладання інтернету чи щось таке. Звичайно, цифрова трансформація – це в першу чергу потрібно самій громаді. Це про смарт-сіті, про сервіси, про послуги, про швидкість, про вигідність, про ефективність. І тому, звичайно, це в першу чергу потрібно громаді. І метафорично я скажу, що ніколи служба таксі не перетвориться в Uber, якщо цим процесом буде керувати там керівник бухгалтерії. Розумієте, поки власник або SEO, або як в нашій державній системі там, мер або голова ОТГ, немає розуміння, яку цінність це дасть громаді, яку цінність це дасть йому на виборах наступних, то це не зрушиться. Тому моє першочергове завдання – це дати розуміння, які саме проекти вони швидко окупні, яка від них цінність, і коли ми їх починаємо впроваджувати, то тоді з'являється необхідність, щоб у заступник був саме заступник цифрової трансформації, якого є повноваження всередині організації цю цифрову трансформацію робити.
To do that digital transformation. Thank you for this detailed response. I will now give the floor to the next panelist. This time, I will just remind you, the viewers and listeners, please ask your questions. And in order to use interpretation, everything is interpreted Ukrainian, Polish, English. On the lower panel of the menu, please choose the right language. when you hear the next speaker speaking another language, you may hear him in Ukrainian. I invite now Olena to discuss the viewpoint of the government, namely the ministry responsible for digital development of Ukraine. I hope Olena will open up the prospects in this field and will tell us how it is used locally. I mean, cooperation between the governments in the field of supporting digital transformation. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to thank for this opportunity to get involved with your event. Indeed, it's a good tradition visiting PDF Ukraine, not only PDF Ukraine, also PDF Europe, and also having the opportunity to speak on this forum. As it was mentioned by Vadim before, the ministry is as old as 1 year, and this year became very interesting for our cooperation, and in particular, all those challenges faced due to quarantine and pandemic. This confirms that digital transformation is not just a fashionable innovation. This is also even underlines the priority of that sphere for development, both on the national level and regional level. I would like to focus on several moments of our cooperation with the ministry. Of course, it's not new. E-governance, smart city in every city of Ukraine, in particular, the larger cities have been developed for quite a while. Every city is on its own level of development, placing the particular priorities in particular projects. And we have certain competition who implements faster and whether the mayor is more or less popular among the inhabitants due to that. And the role of central government and the ministry in that field is being a coordinator and moderator of that process. Vadim also mentioned the program of regional digitalization, which has been created also by representatives of the cities or municipalities. Everybody has an expertise in the particular field, and jointly we can create a framework, a program, a framework strategy. Within it, one can keep moving and develop further. In spite of representing our cities and our local governments, we can see there are IT services which are necessary for the inhabitants, which are interregional, which requires our joint coordination and cooperation and relevance also on the technical level. We have to think on how to create convenient service for the inhabitants of our city, also with a prospect of how one can cooperate with other services. An important role will be applied by the deputy mayors responsible for digital transformation, deputy chairman of the administration responsible for digital development. We didn't find such a candidate in Lviv Oblast so far, but we hope we can soon do so. We are inquiring among our friends. I believe that cities in the future will just use the best practices rather than proliferating digital systems with no purpose. Also, the ministry can play the role as a trend setter in the field of public services. For example, there can be a public service, and yet baby or data exchange about the place of residency registration. It's a public, it belongs to the government, yet it cannot be implemented with no municipalities and with no local governments involved. This, of course, requires a liaison of information systems and we have to answer the demand. We need to adopt our information systems, change them accordingly, and regulate the processes in the information systems and local governments. Another example of tone setting by creating DIA, launching the mobile application, the ministry has set up the standard for the government level. And we can hear from our residents, why don't they do it like DIA or something like that? From the perspective of user experiences, and also from the perspective of the pattern of the process, because everything should be quick and fast for the residents. This became another confirmation that one has to improve our services, the product we are providing for the users, and that process continues, and also the website, which will allow the residents to file their applications for e-services and also to receive results in the electronic form. Indeed, the project is rather old. There is an existing version of it. It's clear that technically and also by interface and visualization is not up to the requirements that nowadays users have. Therefore, our objective is to make it as useful as possible, and the one which can be integrated with other services. It will be integrated with identification system, with payment services, also for the services that are subject to administrative fee, and the users will not have to go for another portal in order to pay, upload the receipt that will create inconvenience. They will do all of it on a single portal. Also, it's convenient for the residents, and also visually, efficiency of processing of all their requests. Thousands of them come over months, and this should not create additional workload and lower the efficiency of the activity of the employees of the City Hall. We have implemented the system of electronic filing, and also statements, applications of citizens will be processed on the side of document filing. Also, in the electronic form, the residents will receive them on the portal, the resulting service on the portal. This is one of our main objectives, which is coming closer to completion. We shall test the beta version of it very soon, and we shall be able very soon after testing to launch as a fully fledged service. That's it. If you have any questions, you are welcome. I have a question for clarification. You mentioned about the need for regional services, more cooperation between the municipalities and the regions. It's obvious to me, I remembered about one thing in Ukraine of the completed stage of decentralization, reform, creating concentrated territorial communities, amalgamated communities, and local councils, local governments within the decentralization budgets have a greater capacity and greater independence. That correlation between strengthening of capacity of communities and municipalities and the role of the government, as we can hear from Mr. Vadim, in addition for being the trend, the setter, and having the young team which is coming implementing their ideas. It's also responsible for the legal framework of the cities. And for the cities and communities, there are quite many small and medium cities around the Lviv city, smaller municipalities. Maybe we should do economic exploration for local residents and businesses. There are advantages for businesses from development of digital services, You mentioned convenience for the residents, but what will happen to if we speak of creating, if Lviv has successful cases of advantages for the businesses as well? Speaking about providing electronic services, speaking of the residents, I also mean business as well, because City Hall as a local government is providing part of its services for corporations as well. And accordingly, they can also use all the services. Certain services, speaking about registration of business, this is a responsibility of the Ministry of Justice or central government. However, when we speak of services, this is not just for the residents, it's also for corporations. When we speak of decentralization and the capabilities we have obtained, including financial ones, would increase our capabilities to introduce particular services. Yet, this is a sphere of development which is quite expensive. Having more resources in the local budget, we can develop the sphere of e-governance, electronic transformation, including smart city. Mainly those are costs of the budget. I mean, creating all that would mean the cost of the budget. And there is sort of correlation between the decentralization reform and the regional digital transformation. Thank you very much indeed. There was time in the beginning of decentralization reform that when digital transformation gained momentum, experts or Ukrainian reformists have mentioned the experience of Poland. Back in 1990s, Poland underwent the stage of reform of local government, and today we have quite many interesting cases of the cities who develop technology, using the technology for improvement of transparency of the government, also local economic development. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Michal Lakunsky from Poznań. Mr. Michal, could you please share your experience? In Poznań City Hall, you are responsible in particular for development of smart city. How do people understand the idea of smart city back in Poland, back in Poznań? What are the main areas of support of the smart city in Poznań? And how did Poznań city and generally municipalities in Poland have made use of what has happened 20 years ago? Reform of local government already happened back in Poland.
Thank you so much. I represent Poznań, a city in the west of Poland, between Berlin and Warsaw. We have 500,000 citizens living in Poznań, and totally about 1 million in the entire Poznań agglomeration. So there are two main reasons why we decided to deal with smart city. First of all, we wanted to follow the newest trends, and the trend was towards ecology, towards resilient cities, also the trend towards smart city, which is emphasized right now. So of course we should develop in line with everyone else, and it's important to follow on those important trends. One more reason for which we decided to deal with smart city was technology push. We noticed that numerous technological companies started to emerge in the city and were offering different services. So we realized that this could lead to the situation where there are different islands in the city which are not communicating with each other, and thus they are not very useful. So smart city is a trend or a theory which needs to be adjusted to a particular city, taking into account the context of this particular city, because for a port or for a mountain region city, this would be a totally different situation. One city has a problem with air pollution, another one doesn't. So we need to adjust. And thinking about how to arrange this in Poland, we decided to look at other cities, mainly in Europe, such cities as Tallinn, Stockholm, Copenhagen, and also Vienna. We decided to look for inspiration in the cities which are not far from us, and also it's easier to contact with them in this case. Of course, we could take also examples from the United States, for instance, but their cities are different, and it could be more different to more difficult to apply their solutions here. So inspired by the things developed in Vienna Polytechnic, uh, let's consider several areas of smart city. We, for instance, distributed it into the society, environment, digital city, and mobility. In those areas, we started to speak about smart projects. Some projects were already implemented even before we started to call them smart city projects, but some were still planned for the future. And this entailed a problem because the team which we have created and which represented different areas, different departments, it was tasked to propose different ideas for smart projects. But they wanted to know more. They didn't fully understand what a smart city project was. So we decided that a smart project has two of the four elements. It can be an IT project, an innovative project, which can be a local innovation. It can integrate on the data level, and also it can be inclusive. Like it can include the citizens or it can include the business. So two of the four elements would be enough to call a project a smart project. And this definition simplified the task for us, and there was a wide range of ideas suggested. Some of them were launched later, some of them are active already, and so I will share about some of them a bit later today. Also, we need to further specify this area. We need to prepare some structures and define the responsibilities and communication, and both on the level of communication between the city and the citizens, and also internal communication, because the employees of the city should know that they should be involved. It's not just a small group of employees, it's everyone working for the city. And also, it was necessary to involve the citizens in decision making. That's one of the ideas behind Smart City, and we made some effort to strengthen this area. So the key project, in my opinion, uh, is the participation budget, in which we encourage the citizens to take part in decision making and to decide which projects will be implemented within this project. But for this to happen, some technology is necessary, because there needs to be voting. It needs to be more or less user-friendly, and also the citizens are the one who invent those projects, who propose them, and everything has to happen online and has to be quite easy to use. So this project shows that technology is not a purpose in and of itself, but it is essential for projects to be implemented. So even if the projects are not entirely connected with IT, still IT is necessary for the project to happen. So some other examples come from the area of mobility, which is quite a big area in Smart City. And in mobility, we have already got used to the fact that we can use, for instance, GPS, which helps us to move around the city. And also, we are noticing the new kinds of transportation. We also are noticing Uber and new kinds of mobility. So we have opened the transport data. All the public transportation vehicles, they transmit their data, and we had this data before, but these data were not open. And many creators of applications contacted us to open this data. It's not that we didn't want to do that, it's the fact that our systems were not prepared. And thanks to transferring the data to a different format, a number of different applications emerged, and they provide additional services. Our citizens now can see in how many minutes the tram will arrive. And also, if they can use car sharing, or if they can rent a bike, for instance, they can see where is the nearest rental spot. So this is the future of smart city in the field of mobility. One more idea is the area of management of energy and environmental issues in general. So we had a number of energy optimization projects in educational institutions, and we managed to reduce the costs of energy used in those educational institutions, but we decided to go a step further. In one of such educational institutions, we have installed a solar panel, and so we were able also to produce some energy. And we were able to verify um, that the energy produced in such a way was sufficient to cover many of the needs of that facility. So that was a pilot, and based on that, we wanted to introduce similar activities on a wider scale. My project is called Digital City, and we make sure that a big number of services are available online, and that citizens don't have to physically come to our location. But for this to happen, we need to improve the back office services, because front office is easy to do, but okay, we need also to change the procedures so that we do not need to actually do something on paper. So we need to improve the processes and also the competences of people working in those areas, so that they are able to work with those technologies rather than just having them available. And two more important areas connected with smart city: open data. They are the data which show our transparency. On the one hand, we are not hiding anything. On the other hand, they are the fuel for creativity when it comes to development of applications. And also, they are used by us, because when we are introducing a similar project somewhere else, if the data are open, then there is no problem with integrating the system. And one more thing that of which I haven't heard today yet, but it's cyber security. And this is something that takes time to build. Again, people need to be trained. And if we want to be safe digitally, this element has to be developed sustainably in line with other ideas connected with technology. Thank you. So in this case, I would like to ask the
I will
following
ask a traditional
question.
but in Ukrainian, not Polish, though I speak Polish, because I live in Wasanaw. So I have a question to you, with your permission, because Poznan is one of the biggest, the most active cities that introduce technologies of smart cities and other technologies, and but not the only one. In Poland, there are some others. And do you see in the concept, you see the development, what developments are possible?
Do you see any
The
field for cooperation with other
other
cities?
cities, or because you are a part of EU, maybe it's possible cooperate with other regions of EU. Then, what will be your policy in the context of security, of data security, information security that you share with other partners and stakeholders?
We cooperate on many levels with different partners and institutions, especially public institutions. So, for instance, we collaborate with the surrounding communities, and this is happening on the level of experience exchange. Next, after the regional level comes the national level. There are conferences, etc., and also there are European conferences and other events in which we are trying to exchange experience and share our lessons, which we maybe learned on our mistakes. Right now, we are implementing a project within which we have several cities which are quite well developed in a smart city, more developed than we in Poznan are. So they are a lighthouse for us. And also we have technical partners, an IT company, and an example of such a project which has already been implemented was the system for applying for a visit in a city institution. So, of course, because of the pandemic, it is not allowed for everyone to come at any time. And we already had a certain system to arrange a queue. But for such a mode, when the number of users increased, it was impossible to use the previous system, the previous call center, and also the website was not responsive, so it was not suitable to use on mobile devices. So we developed a responsive website, and also it is adjusted for the use by many people. They can simply select the service they want to receive in the institution, and then they are registered for a certain time. So we are implementing this thanks to the support of partners from abroad.
Thank you. We have a question to Mr. Bortnik. I don't know whether he's with us or not. If not, I collect questions from the audience. Maybe this question will be addressed to Olena. How many people in Lviv are using the room of the citizen? At present, we have to say that the personal office of a resident, and we don't have a lot of users of that service, but several hundreds in a month come. So it's about 200 to 300. It depends on a month. And I think it's a low level of usage of such a service. And it's because the site has some barriers, technical barriers, and also it is not adapted to mobile devices, and it will be a new version. But if to speak about the development of a new portal, then this project costed us a little bit less than 1.5 million of hryvnia. Vadim, you're also working, as far as I know, in Lviv. You're responsible for open data. Could you, what is the policy of open data in your city? You spoke about this websites and portals, and when you were in many years ago, cooperative with Lviv, and we started to work on open data in those days, and that was quite a new phenomenon in those days. But now it is so developed that some cities, even Poland, could take an example from such a like a person who's responsible for regional digitalization. So open data role in this process of economic development, data development, digital development, social political development, and from the point of view of Lviv. Tell us about that, and also give us a little bit of history, because that issue was very important. Yes, that's correct. That is the project where I started when I started my knowledge with smart city in general and e-governance. That project, it was in 2016. It started with a cooperation with SUP Europe and one foundation, and we organized the Open Data Challenge and hackathon, and we understood during that project, and in the end, we understood that the topic is interesting, not only from the point of view of transparency and responsibility, accountability of the city council, but also it has a big potential. And there was a very good feedback among civic activists, and so there was a potential to create services on the base of open data, and then they would bring not only benefits and more publicity to local government, but also there would be economic benefits. And that is considered to be a sign of good usage of open data when it gives economic profit. But if you speak about the development of open data in Lviv, at present there is a portal of open data, and the third option of it, the third version of it. And with the development of SICAN, on the basis of which it was developed, we improve it, and our own service. So then there are different services, and with usage of open data, we saw at some point, you see, local data, city data, is not that interesting. It's a little bit different, but when we created local services on the basis of open data, it was not demanded by developers because they didn't give them the volume of big data on the basis of which they could develop some algorithm and some difficult calculations. Because with our own example, we wanted to show how open data can be used easily, and there is no need to have lots of data. So we have a panel of the city, and where we have aggregated data, public, and it's a very, very good format, very friendly format, and you can see how the city is developing using different options: population, budget, statistics, administrative services, hotline calls, etc. So chatbot, which is using data, and it provides a very good service friendly service to the residents just on the phone. And it's like an imitation of communication with those who work in city council. Sometimes we joke that there's someone from the city council who's working 24/7, and it collects data from open data and also from different services. It is integrated with the help of AP and with the data of on transportation. So through that application, you can find out how soon your bus will come to your bus stop. So at some point, when we were developing that direction, it was very useful for us the intellectual chart of open data was very useful for us. We used those principles, and it brought structure to our work. We understood how to develop that field for that development to be balanced. There is no need to open data just for collection of data, to have more collection of data. There should be standards, and you need to understand the goal, why we opened different slots, and where it can be used, for which services it can be used. And also, we have communication within open data with national level. There is a regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers which gives the trends, sets up trends which open data should be opened by local self-governance. And also there is a national portal, a portal of open data, where those sets should be. But there are local portals, and there was a decision. We discussed it with different cities, and with the state agency on e-governance, how to provide interaction. On one hand, cities which then don't have an opportunity to set up their own portals, and it depends on the cities also, how they could use and how national portals, and how to create offices in national portal, and also cities who have a chance and who want to like to support their own portals, how they could interact with the national portal. So that's we've selected a housing portal that collects our data, and so we have this data, and also the data is present on the national portal. It's very efficient. It doesn't demand from us any additional effort. We just need to meet some technical standards, and for our portals to exchange data independently. So in principle, this is the scenario we're using, and every story on open data, we are trying to communicate it to deliver to others, and we showed different data in different formats. It's an example how to use it. We want to develop that field in the future. There is a big challenge as to technical standards on the data. For it's very important that all cities follow the standards and have the same structure for us to have better interoperability. And it would bring attention of developers for them to be able to develop data from different cities. Thank you. I have an impression from this panel, and with representative of the cities, that and my effort to draw a parallel or a connection, the state between the state and its role in the digitalization of the country on the local level, and local self-governance, and I mean cities. I have the impression that cities and are quite independent, judging by Polish experience, and they're independent in the realization of their policies. What if there is no institute of deputy mayors on digitalization? And what if that contact, what if the structure is not set up? Will there be communication between the national level and the municipal level? Will it exist? Or you will have to develop some other
Перепрошую, мене якось викинуло, я не міг підключитися. Все зараз добре. З точки зору місцевого самоврядування, дивіться, звичайно, з 1470 органів громад будуть якісь громади, там 200-300, які будуть лідерами, які будуть це впроваджувати, інші будуть до них підключатись, доганяти, будуть якась частина, які будуть так званими аутсайдерами, і
some
ми,
kind of, there will be
звичайно,
also some
бачимо
outside.
зараз, що
And we see now,
перший
we are
крок
observing that
зробити
the first
такі,
step
зробити шоу-кейси,
is we need to develop
зробити
showcases,
пілоти, MVP, умовно
pilots,
кажучи, показати
in
на
other
тих,
words, just
на
to
лідерських
show
громадах, як це повинно працювати. З точки
leaders,
зору
how
і
leaders are working,
інституційної, і
from the point of
тобто
view
організаційної, з
institutional,
точки зору проєктів, які реалізовані, щоб
organizational, and
і
projects
люди, і
that are
керівництво
implemented for
побачили,
people to see
що це дає ефект.
that this
І
is
насправді
very good. This is
це перше, що
efficient.
хочу сказати.
So
Друга
this is the
історія,
first
яку
point. Second point.
друга річ, що іноді люди, які
Sometimes
знаходяться на посадах
who hold
лідером
positions,
цифрової трансформації в громаді,
who are
може
leaders
бути іноді і не заступник мера з цифрової трансформації. Може бути керівник управління, може бути окремий депутат, який бачить в цьому сенсі, пробуваючи в історії, може бути громадський діяч. Тому, по-перше, я все одно закликаю більш широкий коло долучатись. І коли саме громадськість починає бачити в цьому сенс, то влада іноді підтягається іноді з трьох боків. Іноді це спускається зверху, і добре Олена сказала, що це зараз модно, цифрова трансформація. І це може також в якомусь сенсі зіграти свою роль. З іншого боку, коли громада починає казати, дивіться, я ось був, я їздив там в Барселону, їздив в Польщу і бачив там такі речі, давайте ми також таке зробимо. І третій шлях, коли керівник громади сам розуміє, я не бачу цифр, я не бачу, як рухається транспорт, я всліпу приймаю рішення, давайте будемо робити цифрову трансформацію. Це три шляхи. І наостанок скажу, що, звичайно, ми працюємо з кожним містом, з кожною громадою вже зараз. Але чому ми наполягаємо на тому, щоб інституційна складова була створена? Тому що ланка президент, віце-прем'єр і CDTO в всіх міністерствах, воно пришвидшує, дає можливості. Коли, дивіться, цифрова трансформація, вона часто зустрічає спротив. Тому що це більш прозоро, тому що це іноді для деякі люди повинні будуть змінювати свої звички. Якщо людина ходила і по кабінетах носила папірці, то треба буде шукати нову якість, нову користь, якщо ці папірці починають рухатись. Тобто є супротив, іноді він навіть корупційний. І тому, звичайно, я скажу, що ті речі, які ми зараз робимо з податковою, з митницею, з землею, коли прибираються цілі ланки схем, то, звичайно, що навіть є питання, що і охрану потрібно CDTO призначати. Я жартую, звичайно, але питання в тому, що і, звичайно, на рівні керівника управління це можна зробити, але це набагато важче, ніж коли у цієї людини є прописані повноваження, і всі розуміють, що є політична воля і організаційна для того, щоб ці зміни робити. Тому це буде, звичайно, але ми, звичайно, 100% будемо все робити із тими громадами, які ще не впровадили.
There's a question from the audience. You made a research. You were trying to understand the status of digitalization in Ukraine. You have a presentation on the website. It's very interesting in details. But which regions or cities are the most active, with the biggest interest to digital transformation? Which are the best success stories? We don't have time for details, but maybe you have something interesting to tell
наразі
us.
всі міста, більш-менш великі, всі обласні центри, практично всі працюють в напрямку цифрової трансформації, в тій чи іншій мірі. Питання в тому, що іноді не вистачає досвіду, іноді ресурсів, але я скажу, що добре, що міста обмінюються один з одним. У нас є Smart City Club, де керівники IT-напрямку керівників міст
IT people
спілкуються,
from different
обмінюються
cities
інформацією.
communicate and
Серед
share
лідерів,
information.
звичайно, Львів,
Among leaders,
Вінниця,
that is
Тернополь,
Lviv,
Житомир,
Vinnytsia,
Харків,
Тернопіль,
мій
Житомир,
рідний.
Харків.
Ну, про Київ
And
100%, що треба,
Kyiv,
я
it
мовчу,
goes
Маріуполь. Я
without saying.
боюся не
Mariupol
сказати
also.
якусь. Є невеликі громади, які також
There are some small
нас,
communities,
ну,
by the
які
way,
рухаються в цьому напрямку.
who move in
Іноді
that direction
маленькі
too.
міста
Sometimes small
роблять
cities,
більше, ніж
they
великі,
do more than
тому
big
що
cities.
там
Because
простіше це робити з
it's
точки
easier for
зору,
them,
коли
from the
люди
point of
один одного
view.
знають. Ви знаєте,
You see, they
коротко
know each
скажу, в мене
other.
була така історія, я
And
поїхав
I had a
в Естонію
story. When I went to
вивчати досвід,
Estonia to
і
study
в
the
нас там була
experience,
зустріч
and
з
we had a
одним
meeting
міністром,
with one
неважливо яким,
minister,
і він розповідав про цифрову
and he
трансформацію, яка в
he
них
spoke about
відбувалася.
digital
І я пожартував
transformation,
із
and
зали, що, ну, мабуть, їм
I
легко
joked
було домовитись з
that it
іншим
was easy for
міністром, тому
you
що він ваш
with
сусід.
other ministers
Він
because
каже,
they
так
are your
він дійсно мій
neighbors.
сусід, він за 2
said,
дома від мене живе. Ну,
Yeah,
тобто,
my
і це
neighbor,
іноді
the other
також
minister is to build this
впливає
away from my building,
цей
from my
спосіб
house.
прямої
So
комунікації.
that direct
І ми
communication
сподіваємося,
is
що
very
нам вдасться це
important, and
забезпечити
it
от
works
саме
in small
таке
cities and
спілкування, щоб
towns.
прискорити.
So we hope that we
Причому
will
і між
speed up
міністерствами
this
також.
process.
Зараз
And
ми
we'll
кожного
speed up the
тижня
communication between the
починаємо
ministries and
зв'язок
them. Every
регіон,
week we have a
CDTO,
call,
CDTO регіональні,
region
CDTO
and
міністерськими, для
national
того, щоб
level.
міністерство розказало, що вони роблять,
Ministry and
регіони,
local
що
level.
вони хочуть
For us to inform them,
від
and
них.
we
І
would
потім
like to get the
десь
feedback what
десь
they
воно
want.
виліється в те, що
And
будуть
it
такі
will
зв'язки,
come
коли
to that
які
communication,
допоможуть
which will
уникнути
help
помилок ще на
prevent
початку,
mistakes at the very
на
beginning.
початку, а не тоді, коли вже зверху
Not
спустили якесь
when,
рішення, а воно не натягується, не працює, не надиває
we don't
на
need
ті
to wait
процеси, які
for the
відбуваються в
mistakes to
уряді.
happen and then to tell them how to fix those mistakes. It would be interesting to see the study, what people in those regions think about that, about the digital technologies in the public services. And it will be interesting to get their feedback, how digitalization influences on the feeling of inclusivity of residents, because they can participate in decision-making
Ну, до речі,
processes
ми
and
це перше, це
in city
був
management.
такий конкурс. Наступного року у
we
нас
have the
великий
competition,
проект цифровий
and next year
рейтинг
we'll have a
регіонів, є
big
більш глибоке
project,
дослідження, і там,
digital
звичайно, що ми будемо
rating
вже
in the
питати
region.
не
It
тільки
will be a deep study,
самих
and
чиновників
we'll
на містах, але
poll
й ще
not only
їх
among
вже
public
безпосередніх
servants, but
клієнтів, з
their
якими
clients.
йде робота. Але тут питання в тому, що є
So the issue is
два напрямки. Дуже
there are two
одна така
directions.
погана тенденція, що
One
зростає відсоток
bad
людей,
trend,
які
that there is
бояться
the
технологій,
number of people who are
які
afraid of
вважають, що
technologies, that number is
технології
growing.
забирають частину їх
That number of
свободи.
people is growing because they
І
believe
з
that
цим треба
technologies
також
detect
працювати. Дуже багато
part
є
of their freedom.
по-перше,
So,
доносити, що
And we
безпека
need to
даних
inform
це
them
важливіший
that
пріоритет.
security data is
Друге, і це з
it's a
цим треба
priority for us.
працювати. Друга
And we have to
історія
work with
про
that. And the other story,
комунікувати,
we need to communicate
комунікувати те, в чому це робить, що це робиться,
what
робить зручно, і боротися з
that it's
цими
friendly, it's
предрассудками, чи як
convenient,
це.
and we also
Ну,
have to
коли
overcome our
люди
prejudice.
дійсно вірять в
When people
фейкову
believe
інформацію,
into
і це заважає розвитку.
stories,
І
and
відсоток
that
таких людей, на
is
жаль,
an
зараз
obstacle
ми
for
робили
development. And that
дослідження, зростає,
percentage
але є
is growing of such people,
інший
but
шлях.
also
Навіть
there is
якщо
a
ми з вами
different
взагалі
road.
нічого не будемо
Even if we
робити,
don't do
цифрова
anything,
трансформація буде рухатись,
digital
тому що є в
transformation
нас,
will
умовно
will
кажучи,
develop.
Приватбанк, який
Because
7 років
there's
назад
a
зробив
Приватбанк, which,
один
for
з
example,
кращих в
7 years
світі
ago, it was
застосунків,
one of the best
він зробив більше для
applications
цифрової
7 years ago. They
трансформації,
did
може,
more for digital transformation
ніж
than
якесь міністерство, яке
ministry.
там робило якийсь проект. Тому що так само Uber і
And
там YouTube і всі інші сервіси, світ так швидко рухається, що наше завдання просто вчасно підставляти руки і хвататися за цей потяг, на якому нашу країну винесуть, і в тому числі і наші регіони на краще, зручніше і заможніше життя.
And better life.
Дякую.
Thank you. Michal, a question to you, Mr. Michal, a question to you. It's very interesting how Poland, which is a decentralized country with local self-governance, which has economic and political independence, it's interesting. And for me and to audience, how Poznan, how you look at this role of the state Do you get the support from the national level, from the national government? Is there a role the national government can play in the process of digitalization or local digitalization? Because the city cannot, like what you mentioned, cannot educate on the national level. And education among people who don't understand what technologies mean and advantages they provide. And our experience in Ukraine, data of cities, and we understood that very often local public servants, they don't understand quite well what is a political policy of open data, how to do audit, digital audit, etc. The government or the state, from the perspective of your city, do you get the support? Institutional support, educational support, economic support? Do you have relations between your local governments in your city and also with the national level?
To tell you what inspires us and moves toward digital transformation in terms of relations between the local and national government, we also need to mention that other relations between the local government and the citizens, because the citizens demand new services and we react to their needs. The local governments in Poland are arranged in such a way that some of the central services are also provided through them. So, for instance, they issue IDs or vehicle registrations. And in this case, it's the government who inspires and who modernizes the system. And in this case, it's the government who takes care about everything, about informing the citizens about the new service, and then the citizens willingly use those new opportunities. But these are just some of the services that we provide as a local government, and many of other services are provided locally. And in this case, it's the local government who decides how to provide them. So this strongly depends on the demand from the citizens on the change towards the digital version of the service. One of the examples that happened recently, we had parliamentary elections and presidential elections. So if someone lived in Poland but was not officially registered in Poland, they could register just for the elections and to vote. And because of the complicated access to the physical office of the local government, many people used this electronic way, and about 5% of the total voters used the system. Previously, we would never be able to process such a big number manually. And so only because of the fact that we hoped that people will use the online opportunity, we were able to connect several systems into a logical sequence. And so thanks to those IT processes, thanks to this, we were able to add the voter to our voters register and to inform their local community that they don't have to vote there. So this was a strong demand from people who live in our place, because it's the businesses that encourage them to use the services. Indeed, the banking industry was one of the leaders in this transformation of digital services. We still have to go that far, but they are those who inspire us.
Участь за презентації. У нас залишається небагато
Thank you very
часу.
much for your participation and for your. We don't have a lot of time, but this is a question to all panelists. I would like to ask every panelist just 2-3 minutes to share your success story, the best success story. It could be a service or some case, some idea. which you are proud of, and in which you see the highest potential for the future? Olena, be the first, please. Thank you. In fact, if to speak about the project that took place, I can say that it's ecosystem and family projects related to open data, because those are the projects I'm proud of in view. If to speak about the project that we have now on the stage of implementation, that is a quarter of a citizen or resident. It's at the very beginning, and it requires a lot of attention, and we see that we need it very much for local self-governance, and also from the point of view of providing services. Also, it is needed for residents of Lviv. And again, pandemic just proves that it's very important. I cannot select just one success story, because during last year, I moved from one project to the other. So that's why I mentioned two projects, two success stories. Вадим,
в мене, ви знаєте, в мене був такий досвід, хотів би ним поділитися. Я тільки прийшов в Мінцифру, я пройшло тільки 2 тижні. Я не знав, я випадково натрапив на інформацію, що Мінрегіон вже на фінальній стадії доопрацьовує свою стратегію розвитку регіонів на 2027. І виявилося, що там дуже багато що можна додати з точки зору цифрової трансформації. Нам вдалося, я активно включив, долучилися люди в Мінцифрі, експерти з регіонів, досить швидко вдалося відпрацювати буквально за вихідні цифрові питання, і в цифровій стратегії країни в регіональній політиці на 7 років з'явилося 68 завдань цифрової трансформації, операційна ціль, яка називається цифрова трансформація, в тому числі і 3 KPI з цифрової трансформації. Ну, тобто вважаю, що це такий невеликий успіх інституційний. А далі буде.
And then we'll have more. Mr. Michal, please, the floor is yours.
This year, we have successfully launched the application Smart City Poznan. On the one hand, it helps citizens to communicate different complaints to the city, for example, a hole in the road, or some garbage somewhere, or some car parked in the wrong place. Technically, it is quite simple to enable people to inform the city about such things, but organizationally speaking, that was quite a big challenge to make sure that the relevant services can react really fast, so that the citizens are not worried about the fact that the situation is not tackled yet. And also we needed to get ready with the systems and structures for us to be able to send push communications from the city, thanks to which we are able to inform our citizens about air pollution or about any other urgent changes. So they also can get some weather reports in case of some emergency weather conditions.
Скажу так, з сьогоднішньої бесіди я для себе почув.
In the end, I would like to say that I understood and heard the following. Polish reform of local self-governance took place more than 20 years ago. Ukrainian reform on the decentralization is happening now, but in both countries, what works in parallel, there is a digital transformation and digital changes. That is happening now. That inspires me, it makes me positive, and I understand that the Ukraine has prospects because Ukraine has experience which Ukraine can share with Poland and with other countries of EU and with Western Europe. That's why it's a positive aspect. I would like to thank all the panelists and for making me realize this. And also it was very interesting to listen to you, and there was a good feedback from the audience. Thank you very much. We had Vadim Bortnik from the Ministry of Digital Transformation, Olenko from City of Lviv, and Mikhail Lakomsky from the City of Poznan, from the municipality. Thank you very much for your participation in this very interesting conversation. And for the audience, I would like to remind that I invite you for tomorrow for the morning session, which will, and the topic will be the role of civic society in the digital transformation. And there will be two parts in the morning and after lunch. We begin at 10:20 Kyiv time, and especially those who are watching us from other time zones, from Poland, from Western Europe, with -1 hour. I want you to continue our interesting discussions, communication after this break, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.